There are moments in life that don't arrive gently. They strike loud and uninvited, like thunder in a sky that once looked harmless. For Anna, that moment came wrapped in velvet silence and marble floors. The Whitmore Estate ballroom shimmered under chandeliers the size of carriages. Guests dressed in polished wealth lined the edges of the floor, crystal glasses in hand, polite laughter dissolving into hushed curiosity. And at the center stood a little girl with dust-dull shoes and trembling fingers. She didn't belong there. Everyone knew it. Everyone saw it. But humiliation never asks if you're ready. Ronald Whitmore, billionaire and heir to old maims and old power, leaned forward with a slow, assessing gaze. His voice, when it came, was surgical. "If you can dance this waltz, I'll adopt you." There was no kindness, no warmth, just a conditional sentence dressed like a sentence. The crowd didn't breathe, frozen between disbelief and the morbid thrill of spectacle. They weren't watching a girl. They were watching a test, a dare, a performance staged inside a life she never asked to audition for. Anna's throat tightened, her heartbeat drowning out everything, even the orchestra waiting in sterile silence. She didn't know the steps. She wasn't groomed for galas or gilded floors. She knew dirt paths, not marble ones, garden air, not perfume-thick ballrooms. And yet this was her only doorway, her only maybe, her only chance. The whispering started, the slicing kind. "She'll freeze. Look at her hands. He's not serious, is he?" But he was. Men like Ronald do not joke. They demonstrate. Anna swallowed. Her shoes felt like stone. The chandelier's glare burned across her vision. Too bright, too cruel. She looked small, breakable, like a sprout pushed into winter ground. The conductor lifted a hand. The first note struck. Not a song, a verdict. She stepped forward, one half-measured movement, and stumbled. Gasps cut through the hall like torn ribbon. Her body wanted to run. Her legs wanted to fold. Every bruise of the past whispered, "Not enough, not you, never you." And for a heartbeat, she believed it. Then a hand, gentle, steady, firm. Samuel, the estate gardener. The only soul in that gilded room who knew that green things grow under pressure, not applause. He didn't speak. He simply offered a nod. It was enough to keep her standing. Anna inhaled, shaky, but still upright. Not graceful, not trained, but refusing to vanish. The waltz began to bloom around her, slow and unfamiliar. She faltered, but didn't collapse. She moved, unsteady, but trying. And that in a room full of people who had never needed to earn their place was its own defiance. Across the ballroom, Ronald watched with unreadable eyes. Not pity, not admiration, but assessment, as if she were soil being judged for fertility rather than worth. The dance ended. Too soon. Too raw. No applause, just silence thick with unspoken verdicts. Ronald arose. His jaw was unreadable. His voice controlled marble. "You are not ready." The words landed like frost, killing whatever small warmth had tried to sprout inside her. Then came the second blow. "I will give you one season." A condition, a timeline, a life placed on probation. Not adoption, not belonging, not yet. Just a chance, stamped with an expiration date. The room dispersed. conversation resuming as if a child's dignity was just another hors d'oeuvre passed around for entertainment. Anna stood alone again, but something had changed. Not outside, but inside. The humiliation burned, yes, but not into ash, into root. Because somewhere beneath his cold test and her trembling knees, something old and defiant inside her whispered, "If I learn to grow, they won't get to decide if I belong. I will." And for the first time, quietly, unseen beneath the marble floor, a seed was planted. A season. That was all he gave her. Not love, not shelter, not family, just a deadline. Anna was moved into the Whitmore estate, but not into the family. She was placed like a trial plant, somewhere between charity and inconvenience. The staff watched her with a kind of gentle distance, polite, but unsure whether to hope for her or prepare for her to vanish. Ronald did not speak to her again for days. He didn't need to. His silence carried instructions: grow or be replaced. Anna wandered the vast halls in the early mornings, tracing her fingers across walls older than any memory she had ever been allowed to keep. Portraits of the Whitmore bloodline stared down at her, rigid jawlines, practiced posture, belonging, carved into bone. She did not resemble any of them, and everyone knew it. But the greenhouse was different. Samuel found her there on the second morning, small, quiet, standing among leaves the size of her hopes. He didn't ask why she was there. He already knew. Some children run to windows, others to corners. But the wounded find growth, because growth does not ask for permission. He handed her a small trowel. "Here," he murmured, "so your hands don't stay empty." She didn't answer, but she did kneel. Clumsy at first, then steadier as soil replaced fear. Dirt under her nails felt truer than silk floors under her feet. That afternoon she asked her first question: "Why does he test people?" Samuel kept pruning, then said softly, "Because he was taught that only what survives pressure has value." She frowned. "That isn't fair." He met her gaze. "No. But fairness never built his world. Control did." The greenhouse became her refuge, not because it was kind, but because it was honest. Outside, she rehearsed waltz steps in hallways, tripping over ghost music. Tutors corrected her posture, her diction, the temperature of her voice. They reshaped her the way some people force vines along a trellis. Not asked, arranged. Some days she failed. Some days she wanted to quit. Some nights she cried quietly into borrowed pillows. But every morning she returned to the soil, because plants do not bloom overnight, and neither would she. Weeks later came the turning point of the season. She walked into the greenhouse and found a small terracotta pot placed on the table, with a single fragile root inside, not planted, just waiting. Samuel looked at her. He said, "This is yours. If it grows under your care, then you are learning more than dance." She blinked. "More than dance?" He smiled, slow and meaningful. Roots before rhythm. That evening she placed the pot on her windowsill. It was not approval, not acceptance, but it was the first thing in the estate that belonged to her. And while Ronald watched her from a distance, calculating her progress like an investment, something he did not expect was already happening. She was not performing anymore. She was becoming. Not for him, not for their applause, for herself.
Because a girl given a season to survive can become a girl who learns to thrive, not through waltzes, through roots.
Winter passed slowly, not on the calendar, but inside her. Training became routine, correction became constant, pressure became quiet company. What had begun as a dare on marble floors was now an expectation woven into every breath. The tutors called her promising. The staff whispered, maybe. Ronald said nothing, but his silence had weight, the kind that could snap a branch or force a girl to grow wood instead of petals. Anna practiced every dawn, bare feet, controlled breath, tracing the waltz through echoes, through doubt, through memory. But the more she danced, the more she noticed that dancing was never what he was measuring. He watched how she handled failure, not how she handled rhythm. He watched if she bent, not if she twirled. And every night she checked the root cutting in the terracotta pot, one thin green shoot now pushing through the soil like a whispered promise. I am still here. So was she. It came without warning. During rehearsal, the ballroom instructor snapped sharply. Grace is not surviving the moment. Grace is moving through it, again. Anna reset her stance, shoulders high, chin soft. She moved, misstepped, corrected, but her breath hitched. The instructor sighed. You're holding on like you're waiting to fall. Real waltzing is trust, something you keep fighting. Something inside her cracked, and for the first time she answered aloud, maybe I don't know how to trust people who treat me like a test. Silence flooded the room. Not defiance, not disrespect, just truth. From behind them a voice spoke, low, unreadable. Then learn. Ronald had been watching, not from curiosity, but from evaluation. Their eyes met, not billionaire to orphan, but observer to survivor. The next morning, earlier than sunrise, she returned to the greenhouse. No lesson, no command, just stillness. She stood before the saplings, and something clicked. A plant does not trust the gardener, it trusts the soil, not the person, the process. That was the difference. Samuel approached quietly. Something change? He asked. She looked at him, her voice barely above breath. I think I was trying to earn a home instead of grow in one. He nodded, as if he'd been waiting for her to say exactly that. Then now you're beginning. She began waltzing differently, not for approval, for grounding. Her steps smoothed, her breathing steadied, her presence grew before her technique did. Even the staff noticed. Trays paused mid-air. Hallways went quiet when she passed. They no longer looked through her. They were beginning to look toward her. But Ronald did not soften, not yet. He wasn't measuring skill. He was measuring roots. Was this girl temporary, or was she becoming something that could not be uprooted? Because the truth, the one he never said aloud, was this: he wasn't looking for a dancer. He was testing if she could become someone worth standing beside his name.
The grand hall shimmered with gold that night. Chandeliers burned like captured stars, and every breath carried the scent of wealth and expectation. Ronald Whitmore was hosting his annual charity gala, a spectacle where the world's elite pretended generosity was humility. But that night there was something different in the air, a ripple of rumor, a whisper of her. The little girl from the orphanage, now standing under those chandeliers. Anna. She wasn't dressed like a guest. She wasn't treated like one either. But when the music began, the floor became hers. Ronald's voice echoed across the ballroom again, just as it had months ago. "If you can dance this waltz, maybe you deserve a place among us." It wasn't cruelty this time. It was curiosity. Anna stepped forward, eyes steady. The orchestra struck the first note, and for the first time, she didn't dance to impress him. She danced to remember who she had become. Every step carried the echo of early mornings in the greenhouse, of Samuel's quiet lessons, of every failure that had shaped her into someone unshakable. The room fell silent, not from shock, but from awe. Midway through the waltz, she stumbled, barely a slip, and the audience gasped. Ronald rose from his seat, but before he could move, Anna smiled, steadied herself, and kept going. That moment changed everything. She didn't hide her imperfection. She turned it into rhythm, into grace. When the music ended, the silence was heavier than applause could ever be. Then came a single clap. Ronald, followed by another, then the entire hall. After the crowd dispersed, Ronald approached her. No cameras, no witnesses. He handed her an envelope. Inside, not money, not a check, but adoption papers. Her name written beside his. "You already danced your way into this home long before tonight. I was just waiting for you to realize it." Tears blurred her vision. For the first time, she didn't bow. She hugged him. And Ronald, the man who hadn't hugged anyone in 20 years, didn't resist. Months later, reporters asked Ronald why he did it. Why an orphan? Why her? He only smiled, because she didn't need a home to prove her worth. She just needed someone to stop testing it. Anna's waltz became more than a dance. It became a symbol, a reminder that grace isn't perfection. It's persistence. And sometimes the rhythm that saves you isn't in the music. It's in your heartbeat.
The winter sun rose slowly that morning, spilling light across the Whitmore estate. A place that had once been silent, now filled with laughter. Anna's laughter. It echoed down the marble halls, mingling with the faint melody of a piano. The same piano she had learned to waltz beside, now hers to play freely. Ronald watched from the doorway, a cup of coffee warming his hands. He wasn't the same man who once measured people by pedigree or posture. The walls of pride he'd built over a lifetime had crumbled quietly, not through business losses or scandal, but through a child's courage. Anna didn't just learn a dance, she taught him one, a rhythm called compassion. Months passed, and in a gesture no one saw coming, Ronald opened the Whitmore Arts Foundation, a program for underprivileged children, funding music, dance, and dreams too fragile to survive without help. Reporters came, cameras flashed, but every time they asked why, Ronald simply said, "Because once upon a time, someone danced through my walls and showed me how to live again." And beside him, Anna would stand proudly, not as charity, but as his daughter. Every year, on the same night, they returned to the grand ballroom. No audience, no gala, just the two of them. The orchestra's echo was replaced by a soft record player. Anna would curtsy with mock seriousness. Ronald would laugh, a real laugh, the kind no one had heard in decades. And then they would waltz. Slow, imperfect,
human. "You still remember the steps?" he'd tease. "No," she'd reply, smiling. "I remember the feeling." Years later, when Ronald passed away peacefully in his sleep, a note was found on his bedside table. It read, "If you can dance through hardship with grace, you'll never dance alone. Thank you, Anna, for reminding me that even the coldest heart can find rhythm again." Beneath it lay a photograph, a young girl in a blue dress and a man mid-step, both laughing under the golden light of a chandelier. And so, the billionaire who once mocked a little girl for daring to dream beyond her place found redemption not in money, but in love. Because sometimes the greatest wealth is not what you own, but who you choose to believe in. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to remember those who never stopped dancing through life's hardest songs, a reminder that kindness always finds its rhythm.